I wasn't expecting today to turn out like this. There I was, standing in the corner of the garage-turned gym, catching my breath after the third set, when she said it, quiet, almost teasing, but with that edge of something I couldn't place. One more rep, or should I do it for you? Her voice wasn't loud, but it filled the small space, heavy with warmth and something sharp under the surface. I glanced up, heart hitting a strange rhythm. There she was, my friend's mom, but to me, just her. Sarah, mid-40s, and every bit as commanding as the role she owned as our neighborhood's fitness guru. Dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, sweat dampening the strands that framed her face like she hadn't cared if she looked perfect. And those eyes, soft, yet sharp enough to cut through every excuse I was about to give. I tried to steady my breathing, but the room felt suddenly smaller, the late afternoon light sliding through the dusty windows casting long shadows between us. There was a quiet between our words, the kind you feel before something changes but don't quite know how. My fingers itched to reach out, but I kept them clenched at my sides, pretending the ache wasn't something more than muscle fatigue. She stepped closer, just a fraction, and I caught the faint scent of her, cinnamon, maybe, mixed with the faint musk of effort. Her smile was a little crooked, half playful, half serious, like she was daring me to refuse. But I couldn't. I shook my head, trying to meet her gaze without flinching. I can do it. Her eyes lingered a moment longer, the softness folding into something rawer, more unspoken. You sure? Her voice dipped, and for a second, the air between us shifted. A crack in the usual roles we both pretended to play. I wasn't just her friend's kid anymore. And she wasn't just the trainer, the grown-up who told me to stop slacking. No, I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. I'm not sure. She laughed, low and knowing. That kind of laugh that makes you feel like you're sharing a secret no one else gets. Then she reached out, just to adjust my grip on the dumbbell. But her fingers brushed mine longer than necessary, sending a jolt that had nothing to do with the weights. We froze, the contact hanging like a question neither wanted to ask. My pulse throbbed in my ears, and I noticed how her chest rose and fell, steady, controlled, while mine betrayed every thought racing through my head. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words tangled somewhere between hope and doubt. The moment stretched until a soft creak broke the silence. The garage door shifted open a crack. I glanced toward the sound, heart pounding. Someone was coming. Suddenly, the spell shattered, the space between us widening again. She stepped back, clearing her throat, wiping a bead of sweat from her temple with the back of her hand. Guess we better finish before someone actually sees us, she said, but her voice had lost some of its teasing edge. There was something vulnerable there, hidden beneath the usual confidence. I watched her walk over to the bench, the faint glow of the setting sun catching the curve of her neck. She didn't look back, not yet, but when I finally met her eyes again, there was a flicker of something that hadn't been there before. An unspoken question hanging between us like the last rep on a set we both didn't want to end. Then, just as I was about to ask it, the doorbell rang. The doorbell echoed through the house, but I stayed rooted in the quiet tension of the garage, watching Sarah wipe her palms on her shorts. I wanted to say something, anything to break the spell, but my voice caught somewhere between nerves and guilt. She glanced toward the door, then back at me, her eyes briefly flickering with something like hesitation. I knew why she paused. We both did. Sarah wasn't just my friend's mom. She was divorced, sure, but that wasn't the only reason. There was history, the kind you don't shout about. Years ago, she'd been married to someone who left cracks no workout could fix. I'd heard the whispered stories at parties, how she'd poured herself into fitness to drown out the loneliness. And me? I was just a kid then, shy and awkward, watching her from a distance, fascinated but convinced it was out of reach. Now, I was 22, caught between wanting to grow up fast and holding on to a part of myself that still felt unsure. We were worlds apart in age and life experience, and the stakes felt high. Not just the age gap, but the way she'd always been off limits, a line I wasn't supposed to cross. My friend's mom. The thought alone tightened something in my chest, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff I didn't want to jump from, but couldn't stop staring down. I shifted, gripping the dumbbell again, though it felt heavier now. I tried to push down the flutter in my stomach, the way my pulse sped when she looked at me like that, the way her smile softened when she caught me watching her. I told myself it was just admiration, respect, something innocent, but it wasn't. Sarah stepped closer, closing the small distance between us with careful steps, like she was weighing the risk, too. "You've gotten stronger," she said quietly, voice low enough that I had to lean in to catch every word. "Not just here." She tapped my chest gently, right over my heart. I swallowed hard, the air thick around us. "I guess I had good training," I managed, forcing a grin. She smiled back, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Maybe. Or maybe you just needed the right coach." I wanted to tell her I was scared, that I didn't know if I could handle what this was turning into, that the idea of losing her, or losing control, felt like losing myself. But the words stayed buried beneath 1,000 unspoken fears. Instead, I reached out, hesitating just a moment before brushing a stray curl off her forehead. Her skin was warm, the tiniest tremble in her shoulder telling me she felt it too. Our eyes locked, and for a heartbeat, the years between us disappeared. Not the age, not the warnings. Just two people standing in a quiet garage, suspended between what was and what could be. Then, almost instinctively, she leaned into the touch, just enough to meet me halfway. The doorbell rang again, louder this time. The second ring sliced through the thick quiet like a knife. Sarah pulled back sharply, breaking our fragile connection. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then down at her hands, twisting the hem of her shirt like it was suddenly the most interesting thing in the room. She started, but I stepped forward, voice tight. "Wait." My heart hammered. "Is it him?" She bit her lip, and suddenly the confident trainer was gone, replaced by someone younger, uncertain. "No," she whispered. "It's my ex." I blinked. The weight of those two words settled in the air, heavy and unwelcome. Her ex, the ghost who'd haunted her past, and kept this distance between us. "Do you want me to answer?" I asked, my throat dry. Sarah hesitated. "No, I'll get it. Just not yet." I stepped back, swallowing the urge to reach for her again. The truth was, every second with her felt like walking on a tightrope over a storm. I wanted to lean in, wanted to close the distance between us, but the risk was real. I was supposed to be invisible, just the kid she nodded at when I walked in. Instead, I was the reason her past was knocking at the door. Before I could say anything else, the garage door creaked open wider, and then footsteps, fast, sure, familiar. My roommate, Jake. He paused at the threshold, eyes narrowing when he took in the scene. Sarah standing there, her breath still catching from some unspoken moment, me holding a dumbbell like it might save me from whatever was about to happen. "Hey," Jake said, voice casual but with an edge. "I was looking for you, man." The air thickened. Sarah's jaw tightened. I could see her wrestle with whether to stay or vanish. "I'm just finishing up," I said, trying to sound normal. But normal felt impossible. Jake stepped in, his gaze flicking between us, and something unspoken passed between him and Sarah, something I wasn't meant to see. I swallowed hard, my fingers tightening around the dumbbell. This wasn't just about workouts anymore. It was about secrets, about how close we were to crossing a line that could never be undone. Sarah looked at me for a moment, eyes full of warning and something else, maybe regret. Then she nodded and turned to Jake. "Hey, Jake." "Hey, Sarah." His smile was polite but strained. I felt like I was watching a silent war, every glance, every pause loaded with things left unsaid. I wanted to run. I wanted to stay. Instead, I stood frozen, caught in the space between what I wanted and what I feared. And somewhere beneath it all, that dumbbell in my hand felt heavier than ever. Jake's presence felt like a wedge driven straight between us, cold and unyielding. I watched Sarah's smile tighten, her usual calm slipping like fragile glass. There was something behind her eyes, something I hadn't seen before, a flicker of unease, or maybe regret. I couldn't tell. Jake glanced at me, and his gaze lingered just a moment too long, like he was piecing something together or trying not to. "So," he said, voice low, "you two working out together now? Didn't know you had the energy, man." A half laugh slipped out of me, awkward and brittle. Yeah, she's a good trainer. Sarah stepped closer to me, her breath catching. Maybe too good. The words hung between us like a dare. My heart thudded painfully, pounding against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I wanted to tell her, no, to show her that I wasn't just here for a workout, that every glance, every touch, had been building into something I couldn't deny. But Jake's smirk shifted, sharp now. You sure you're not just distracted? His eyes locked on mine, then flicked to Sarah like he was warning me off. I clenched my jaw. Distracted how? Come on, Jake said, stepping closer, voice dropping. You're not stupid. Sarah. His words hit like a slap, raw and unexpected. I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. Embarrassment? Anger? Desire? All tangled up and impossible to separate. Sarah's hand brushed mine again, this time with urgency. Stop it, she whispered fiercely. Don't do this here. But Jake wasn't done. You think this is just about fitness? You're playing with fire, kid. I wanted to push back, to say that I wasn't scared, that I knew exactly what I was doing. But my voice caught in my throat. Suddenly, Sarah's eyes met mine, wide and fierce, and for the first time, I saw her vulnerability crack wide open. I didn't ask for this, she said softly. But maybe I wanted it. Her words were barely a breath, but they hit me like thunder. The weight of everything, her loneliness, my hesitation, the impossible line we were both crossing, pressed down hard. Jake's jaw clenched, and he took a step forward, as if to protect or maybe to claim. I wanted to move toward her, to close the distance, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Then Sarah reached up, fingers trembling as she cupped my cheek. The touch was electric, fragile, like the calm before a storm. Our eyes locked, hers searching, mine wild with questions. And just as I leaned in, the front door slammed shut somewhere in the house. The slam echoed through the house like a gunshot, jerking us apart. Sarah's fingers dropped from my cheek, her eyes wide with panic. Jake stiffened, turning toward the sound, a dark shadow crossing his face. Before any of us could speak, the hallway door creaked open and then closed again. Footsteps, slow but deliberate. I swallowed hard, heart pounding. From the living room came a soft, unmistakable voice. Sarah? My breath caught. It was my friend. The guy I'd been sneaking around. The one whose trust one was already breaking by being here. Sarah's jaw tightened, a flicker of guilt flashing behind her eyes. I didn't know you were home, she said quietly, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Jake's expression darkened further. Well, now it's not so quiet anymore, is it? I looked at Sarah, torn between wanting to run and wanting to hold her. The fragile bubble we'd created shattered. My friend appeared at the doorway, eyes wide, confusion and something else, hurt, mixing in his gaze as he took in the scene. Who's this? He asked, voice low but steady. Sarah swallowed, then straightened, the strong trainer mask slipping back on. It's complicated. I felt every ounce of shame rise up like a tide. This wasn't just about a crush anymore. It was a betrayal tangled with promises and lies. My friend's eyes flicked to Jake, then to me, before settling back on Sarah. I need to know the truth. The room felt like it was closing in on us, and I realized with a sinking heart that nothing would ever be the same. Sarah looked at me, and in her eyes, I saw the same question I was too afraid to ask. How did we get here? And what were we going to do now? The room held its breath. My friend's gaze locked onto Sarah's, then slowly shifted to me. For a long moment, no one spoke. I could feel the walls closing in, every heartbeat pounding louder than the last. Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line, her hands trembling slightly at her sides. Then, with a deep breath, she stepped forward, not away, but into the middle of it all. This wasn't supposed to happen, she said quietly, voice rough with unshed emotion. I never wanted to hurt you or anyone, but sometimes life gets messy, and sometimes you find something you didn't know you were looking for. My friend's eyes softened, just a fraction, as if he understood more than he wanted to admit. I swallowed hard, then spoke, voice shaky but steady. I never meant to betray you. But this feeling between us, it's real. I don't know what comes next, or if it's right. but I can't pretend it doesn't exist. Sarah looked at me then, eyes full of both regret and something like hope. Neither can I. My friend exhaled slowly, stepping back. I don't know if I forgive you, he said honestly. Maybe I never will. But I do know this. You both deserve to be honest with yourselves. The silence stretched, heavy but somehow freeing. We weren't perfect. We weren't ready. But for the first time, we were all seeing each other clearly, flaws, fears, and all. Sarah reached out, her fingers brushing mine again, this time steady, sure. No promises, no guarantees. Just the quiet understanding that sometimes love isn't clean or easy. It's messy, complicated, and real. And that was enough for now. Weeks passed after that day in the garage. Days filled with quiet glances, unfinished conversations, and the slow, careful rebuilding of trust. Sarah and I didn't rush anything. There was no grand declaration, no sweeping gestures. Just moments, small, honest, imperfect, that reminded us why we'd crossed a line that once seemed impossible. My friend stayed distant, but he never cut ties completely. Maybe forgiveness takes time. Maybe some things just can't be fixed. But through it all, I learned something important. Love isn't about perfect timing or easy choices. It's about truth, the messy, raw truth you hold on to when everything else feels uncertain. Sarah and I still meet in that same garage, now lighter somehow, like the space between us isn't charged with secrets anymore. Sometimes, when the light hits just right, I catch her smile, real and unguarded. And I know we're both holding on to something fragile and fierce. We don't know what the future holds, and maybe that's the point. Maybe love is just this. Two flawed people daring to stay close, even when the risks are real.